I wasn't already there. Okay.
Hi.
We're live.
Hi, everyone.
Sorry, I don't know. I hope that was, 7 seconds. That's okay. Yeah. We were just a bit, someone said hello so quickly that we were really nervous that you've been able to watch us just getting ready. Welcome to the Bookwanderers Club and a bit of a weird for me episode. Some of you watching have been requesting an episode that is about Pages and Co. And as I can't interview myself, I have enlisted my boyfriend Adam, who you might recognise if you joined in with the Bookwanderers quiz that we did a couple of weeks ago. So Adam is going to interview me about Pages and Co, which makes me feel weird.
This is my first interview ever, so bear with me. But I have watched a lot of these, so I'm hoping I can pick up on what Anna's done and continue.
The only thing we need to do is usually when the person is doing a reading, I tweet the link. So we're just going to do that now. I'm finding this.
And then Anna's going to do a reading from the first book. And then we'll go into some questions. What I would say is just I will do the same format as normal. So towards the end of it, get your questions ready and I will ask some of the questions that you've got for Anna. So just hold those off, and at the end we will do some questions from you guys.
I don't think that's going to work, that link. Let's see. It's taking... Oh my goodness. No, this is like...
Hold on.
It's so stressful.
I could do this. I can do this.
No, I need to delete that tweet.
And maybe open the link on a separate
Do you know
page?
what? I think it's fine. I think because it's directly on YouTube, it's not the same problems with findability that we get on when we're doing it via Zoom, and people are clearly finding it.
Lovely.
So it's fine. Let's just crack on.
So we're going to start with a reading from the first Pages book.
This is weird. It's so weird for me. I'm used to interviewing other people.
What are you reading for us? Which section?
Well, okay, so 2 readings, as you know. So I'm going to read from book 1 and then book 2. So this is from the very first time that Tilly bookwanders in book 1, Tilly and Bookwanderers. Okay, so don't worry, you can't watch me. Okay. Tilly stopped short. Alice? Yes, Alice said impatiently. It's very rude to forget someone so quickly after you first met them, you know. No, Tilly protested. I haven't forgotten you. I'd started to wonder if you were really real. Why, it's even ruder to question if someone is real. Alice leaned across and pinched Tilly lightly on the arm. Ow, yelled Tilly. What should you do that for? To prove I'm real, obviously, Alice retorted. But it's impossible, Tilly said in frustration. I used to be very similar to you, Alice said, patting Tilly on the arm where she had just pinched her. But so many out-of-the-way things happened to me that I began to think that very few things are indeed really impossible. I know a woman who spoke a lot of nonsense most of the time, it has to be said, but she once told me that she sometimes believes as many as 6 impossible things a day, and all before breakfast. So nowadays, I try to make a little more space for the impossible to happen. Alice attempted to give Tilly a moment to take in everything she'd said, but couldn't contain herself. Anyway, do you want to come to a tea party or not? You said yourself that you want to be more curious. Tilly looked up and steeled herself. Why not? How much stranger could things get? Alice bounced excitedly next to her and held out her hand. Tilly shrugged and took hold of it. All at once, Pages and Co seemed to divide into a grid of tiny tiles that click-clacked over each other like a wooden toy folding down on itself. In only a few seconds, the whole shop had dominoed down and seemed to wind itself in under Tilly and Alice as if pulled to them by a very powerful magnet. Tilly's stomach dropped like the moment you go over the top of a roller coaster, and there was a smell of toasting marshmallows on the bonfire. Oh, I've said that wrong. Smell of marshmallows toasting on a bonfire. Instead of the familiar bookshop, Tilly and Alice were standing in a colourful forest with a thatched house tucked into the trees and a long table set out in front of it. At one end of the table sat a large hare in a bow tie, a dormouse who seemed to be asleep, and a man wearing a rather mad-looking hat. Oh, you were talking about this tea party, Tilly said.
I love that scene. I think that's fantastic. Wonderful. And there's a few people saying that they love the voice that Anna gave to Alice during that. And I totally agree. I think something that you do really well is capture the voices of Anne and Alice and people in the first book, which I think is a real skill to be able to do that. So, So the first question I have for you is, what was the first book wandering scene that you ever wrote?
Okay, so it was actually Alice in Wonderland. I tend to I draft my books chronologically. My first draft, I open the document and I write it from the beginning to the end in order. And so I kind of, I wrote everything in the book in order, and that's the first book wandering bit. I can see that Katie is watching, and I wrote this scene with Katie, and I think it was actually the scene where I really felt like, oh, actually no, this does work. The book wandering does work. And I remember being really excited, and I was writing with Katie, I think it's in Waterstones, Tottenham Court Road, and I was
that's
like,
what Katie's saying, first writing in the basement at Waterstones, Tottenham Court Road.
And I was like, it was the first bit that I'd read out to somebody, and I think that I realized that because I think that when you write something and you want to share it with someone, it's often a sign that it's working. So that was the first scene.
Lovely. Good, fantastic. I actually say this, and I genuinely, I learned from the best. Like, I've seen Anna do a lot of interviews, so I'm just kind of basically using your format. Okay, so you're currently in the process of finishing book 3.
Yes.
What is your favorite stage of writing / editing? What's your favorite stage of the process?
I think my favorite stage is probably what we call line edits, which is basically when you get to like the book is done, the plot, you've worked it out hopefully, and you get to like kind of go through and make the writing as good as it can be. I find plotting quite difficult, and even though I do like elements of first drafting, but like that kind of pressure to just like get a book out can be a bit overwhelming. So I really like when the book essentially exists and works, and I get to kind of go through it and just really enjoy like working on the voices and the language. I also enjoy research because that's not really writing. I like reading books about books and classing that as work.
On that note, do you plan at all? Do you do any sort of planning?
It's funny.
I know the answer to a lot of these questions, but
I don't really plan. I do research quite a lot. Like I read around the subject. Like I've read a lot of books about like the history of libraries, and I'm reading books at the moment to research book 4. And I sort of like make notes, kind of ideas that come to me, and then I tend to make like a kind of bullet point list of what I want to happen in the book. That's maybe like half to a 1 A4 page of bullet points, and that's kind of what I go on. I do find the more planning I do, the better, but I don't find it like, I find it hard to know, and so much stuff happens as I write, and it just kind of comes out your brain.
Develop. Do you ever find that what you start off thinking is going to happen shifts a lot during the writing process, and you discover new things?
Massively. And also things happen like, so I've just finished draft 3, which is kind of like the last like plotty structural edit of book 3. And there was like a relatively small thing that needed fixing. And the way that through thinking how to fix that thing and make it make more sense that happens, I sort of stumbled on an idea that I thought was actually really fun and had a lot more in it, and is now going to be a bigger part of book 4, which had not, like, previously wasn't the plan at all. So I think that you have to kind of allow space for like serendipitous kind of stuff to happen
and follow that through. Lovely. So when you're writing, you listen to music.
I do.
And I was just wondering if you could share with us some of your favorite playlists or artists, and what sort of music you listen to while you're writing.
So you do know, obviously, that I listen to music, although I listen with headphones. So you don't know.
I don't know
much
exactly.
About it. I listen to film soundtracks when I write. I can't listen to music that has words in it. I can't have someone else's words in my head. But I listen to a lot of film soundtracks, and I have a few playlists for like different moods. So like kind of more like actiony, action adventure, exciting things, and then I have like the more kind of set like emotional bits. I listened to the score from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by Imogen Heap. The score for the theatre show is
superb.
Excellent.
You actually tell me onto that, and it is fantastic.
I have recently been listening to the Little Women score from the new film. I listen to a lot of Dario Marianelli, is the composer, and I really like his music as well. So lots of film soundtracks.
I love it. Fantastic. So before you wrote Pages & Co, you were a librarian.
I was.
And a journalist. Yes. Do you think that those jobs have inspired your writing, and do they continue to inspire your writing when you're writing Pages?
Yes, they do.
Yes.
I've been very fortunate to always kind of work with books and words in some ways. And I think that particularly with librarianship, like the thing I loved was that like recommending books essentially, and kind of as a journalist, that's what the best thing was, when you write about a book that you loved and then you find out that people have discovered it because you wrote about it. And I think that kind of is massively like feeds into the like book wandering element of it. And one of my favorite things is when people say that they've discovered like Anne of Green Gables because they read Pages and Co. So I feel like that kind of like desire to recommend books has kind of been the kind of foundation of a lot of what I've done.
Well, you were also, and I don't know if people know this, you were also a form of archivist, weren't you? You did archiving.
Oh,
yeah. So I wonder if that is. Did that inspire perhaps?
I think honestly, like the kind of romantic idea of archives is something that's very pleasing. Like I worked for my graduate job. I did a graduate trainee year for Warwickshire Archives, but it wasn't very like romantic.
Guys, we have found the archivists.
No, don't give anything away. I know you're joking, but I'm worried about accidentally.
No, I
Adam knows too much about what happens in book 3. But so not really, other than like, you know, I just like everything I do, I think is like rooted in a lot of kind of archives and libraries.
I suppose it would have to be, wouldn't it? Something that's familiar to you, whether it's being a librarian, it's being a journalist.
Yeah.
You get practical and more
Warwickshire
inspirational.
Archives itself is a bit more of a kind of like, but I actually worked in the records management branch, which is, oh no.
Our door's going, you carry on, I'll be back.
Shall I do a reading from book 2?
Oh yes, do a reading from book 2.
Sorry, that's our doorbell going. So sorry about that. Usually when I'm doing this with someone else, Adam is obviously on like practical duties of if the doorbell, it sounds like it's not even someone from our flat, it's someone who just wants to get in and go somewhere else. Anyway, I'm going to do a reading from book 2, Tilly and the Lost Fairy Tales, which has just came out at the beginning of May. Is it May? Yes, it's May, the beginning of May. So this is from where they go into a book of fairy tales. And you will see who they encounter. Tilly looked up to see him pointing at the cottage. Behind it was one of the most bizarre things Tilly had ever seen, even in Wonderland. A huge green plant had sprung up so quickly that it had ruptured the ground around it. Cracks and huge furrows stretched out for meters and meters from the base, uprooting other trees and plants and knocking over hedges and fences. The beanstalk was as thick as a London bus standing on one end and was an unnaturally bright green, as though it had been coloured in with wax crayons by a child. Now, obviously, this isn't green because it's black and white, but that's the illustration of the beanstalk. Even stranger than all of that was how it looked as though it had been how it looked as though it had grown in a way that made it designed to be climbed. A rough pattern spiraled around the stalk like a staircase, and branches grew out of it at regular intervals, forming themselves into a makeshift set of railings and handholds. For a few moments, Tilly and Oscar simply stood and stared up at it, but their concentration was abruptly broken by a cacophony of curses and shouts of pain. Suddenly, a boy slid down the final few meters of stalk steps, bounced through the lower branches, and landed at the bottom of the beanstalk in an ungraceful heap. "Should we go and help him?" Oscar whispered. "That must be Jack, right?" "I guess so," Tilly said. "He's a goodie, isn't he? So he can't do any harm." They walked towards him and heard a squawk emanate from under him just as he noticed them approaching. He waved merrily and rolled over to reveal a disgruntled-looking hen half squashed underneath him. "It's really hard to climb down a giant beanstalk while carrying a hen," he said, picking a stray feather off his trousers. "She seems all right, though." The hen regarded him and let out an unimpressed cluck. "And Jack," he said, sticking out a slightly dirty-looking hand. "Tilly," Tilly said, shaking it. "And I'm Oscar," Oscar said. "And you're Jack and the beanstalk." "Well, my name is Jack, and I did grow this beanstalk, albeit accidentally. So yes, I suppose so," Jack said. "It's quite catchy, that, isn't it? Jack and the beanstalk." He swooped an open hand through the sky as if imagining his name in lights. "Are you guys hungry?" Jack asked. "Do you want to come in for—" "Well, I'm not sure what we've got. It might just be water, but you're very welcome to share. And I need to tell my mother what I found. It's going to make our fortune." He held up the bedraggled hen. "Her eggs are going to make me rich."
I love those scenes so much. Those are some of my favourite scenes. I think between the two books, actually, the Bookwanderers and the fairy tales. I love them. I just want to say that I see all of your questions and I will ask those at the end. So thank you for those. There's some brilliant questions coming in, some really good ones. Thank you. So yes, that was from the second book. Okay, I'm actually going to ask this question now. Okay. That's sort of leading on from that. So for those of us that have read the second book, it ends on somewhat of a open cliffhanger. What can you tell us about book 3? Okay, so I don't want to spoil book 2 because I'm aware that like it's just come out in paperback, and so some people might
have not read book 2 yet, but if you have read book 2, it ends with Tilly realizing where, like, so realizing where she might need to look for something that she needs to find.
Okay.
So book 3 is about Tilly and Oscar trying to find, well, it's trying to find the archivists, and they yes, that's what it's about.
There we go. Okay, so a little bit of information.
It's hard when you write a series because you can't. The further you get into a series, the less you can explain a later book without spoiling a
books that go
previous
before
book.
it.
Because obviously,
Yeah,
book
of
3
course.
is like it happens after. Oh well, one thing I can say is that it happens basically straight. So the epilogue of book 2 happens a few months after the rest of the book. Book 3 picks up pretty quickly after
From where
the
it left
epilogue.
off.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, now my next question for you is something that I've heard you ask on the show. On the show. It is, if you had a dream dinner party, who would your guest be? And you can have 5 guests.
5.
I'm giving you 5.
Okay.
And as you always say, you can't just be friends of yours. In the industry. So writers. Sorry, they have to be writers.
And they can be dead or alive.
Dead or alive.
Okay, so Hilary Mantel is one of my favorite authors, and I love her. And I always feel like I've met her briefly a couple of times in quite like formal settings, but I always feel like she's got this like naughty twinkle in her eye. And I think from reading her books as well, I think like she would be really good fun to talk to. Like,
I think you can see that even in photos of her. Yes.
Diana Wynne Jones, who's my all-time favorite author. Although I think I get quite starstruck, although all of these people I'd be starstruck. Virginia Woolf, who's another favorite writer, although I think she would be terrifying. I don't think that she suffers fools gladly, and I would be very anxious talking to her. I mean, I would want all these people to talk to each other, and I would just want to listen, I think.
Just observe.
I didn't know you were going to say 5, so I've only thought of 3.
Okay. I think your 4th, similar line, and then the 5th, curveball.
Okay. What does that mean? Okay. Who else do I love? I guess, it'd be tempting to like pick someone just like iconic, like Jane Austen, I think.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah.
Who, like, I mean, I love her books, but it's just like, it's Jane Austen. Like, it'd be so interesting to just know what she was like in real life, and to like, I'd love to ask her what she felt about her books. And one more person, I would pick Maya Angelou.
Okay.
She'd just be an incredible woman to talk to.
Good fun. What do we think?
Yeah. I don't know. But I think that they would be like.
I think that's a great mix. I think that's a wonderful mix. Okay. I have 2 more. Well, one question's got a few parts, but I have 2 more questions. Then we're going to go to your questions, guys. So, one book that you would love to be turned into a TV series or film, obviously not including Pages and Co. Is there anything that you've read that you think would just translate really well into film or TV?
Again, the temptation here is to say all my friends.
But you can.
Well, do you know what would make a great, like, actually both of Katie Webber's books, Catherine Webber's YA books would make brilliant, like, teen Netflixy, so Wing Jones and Only Love Can Break Your Heart would both make absolutely brilliant like teen films. And I think particularly Only Love Can Break Your Heart, actually, because it's set in the Palm Springs desert, so it's like got a great setting. So.
Love it. Fantastic. So to finish off, we're just going to do 5 would you rathers. So yes, I'm sure you all know how this goes.
I don't know what these are.
So would you rather have a cup of tea with Aslan or Hagrid?
Aslan, I think that you'd probably have like, I don't want to like be mean about Hagrid, but like I'm not sure like how great the like conversation. I don't know. I feel like you could like get into it with Aslan even if you didn't agree with him. But, like you could have a real like meaty conversation. Although he might be a bit annoying and like patronizing. I don't know. I wouldn't really want to have a cup of tea. Like neither of those are particularly exciting. I wouldn't trust what Hagrid would like make the tea. I don't think it'd be nice tea.
No, it could be an interesting brew. Would you rather meet Matilda or Pippi Longstocking?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that I'd rather meet Pippi Longstocking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
She
that
would be
she's just
a
like
lot of fun,
one
I
of
think.
my favorite
Yeah.
characters, and she's so like anarchic. So if I was going to hang out with one of them, I'd say Pippi.
Beautiful. Be a character in Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings.
Harry Potter, because Lord of the Rings is just quite stressful.
There's a lot of
it's very dangerous
peril.
and stressful, lots of battles.
Peril.
Whereas Harry Potter is.
I mean, there's still a lot of peril in that too, but
I mean, you could go for like. Yes, there is, but I feel like in the Harry Potter world, there's like a lot of characters who aren't like directly affected by it. You could just be like a magical person, like just going about your own business in like Hogsmeade.
I love it. Would you rather only ever read paperbacks or hardbacks?
Oh, I like both. I'm not sort of someone who, I know lots of people don't like reading in hardbacks. I like reading in hardbacks, but I think probably if I could only pick one, I would pick paperbacks. It's just more convenient to carry around, but I like a beautiful hardback as well.
Okay, fantastic. And finally, would you rather book wander into a book set in the past or the future?
I think the past. I did a history degree, and I'm like fascinated. I love historical fiction, and I would pick the Tudors.
Fantastic.
So I'd be interested to see what the past was really like. I'm more interested by the past than the future.
Fantastic. So, thank you. Lovely. Right. I'm going to ask welcome to the show. I'm going to ask some of your questions now. So I'm going to go back through and see the ones that you've already asked. But if you've got any more, then please do pop them on the feed.
Gavin's saying, I bet you could interview yourself if you wanted to.
I agree. I'm sure you could.
I'd ask myself easier questions.
Okay. What was the inspiration for Pages of Go?
Well, you should read this one as well.
I will.
Okay. Yeah. Inspiration for Pages & Co. was a mix of things. Like so much of it is just rooted in how much I love books and reading, and how like if I could do magic, then traveling inside books would be the thing that I would want to be able to do. And books are just meant so much to me, mean so much to me. All my kind of jobs have been to do with books. Like books were hugely important to me as a child. And particularly, so Tilly's granddad is kind of like loosely inspired by my granddad, and my relationship with my granddad was massively to do with books. And he used to choose books for me and my sister, and we used to pin like my stories up on their board in their kitchen. So a mix of like that grandchild granddad relationship and just books being great.
We tried to work out how many books we have in our flat, and we reckon it's 750 to 1,000. Did we? Was that the number we said?
Yeah, I guess
something like we have a lot. So no, it wasn't very scientific. Okay, this is from Mimi and Inigo.
Oh, who I signed a book for recently.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. So when did you know that the character of Oscar was going to have book wandering powers passed on to him from his grandmother?
No, you just said it.
No.
Why do you think I was covering your mouth?
I'm so sorry.
You just said it anyway.
Ignore that.
Sorry, that's a slight. Obviously, that Oscar is a book wanderer is not a spoiler, but like it's revealed in book 2 because his family is not sort of nothing to do with books, and it's a bit more of a surprise that he can. Anyway, so I just thought that it was. I love Oscar as a character, and I really enjoyed in book 2 kind of exploring a bit more of his family. And actually that was something that wasn't in the first draft of book 2, and Oscar's grandmother as a character like really changed from I'll say this, at one point she was going to be a fairy tale character who'd got stuck outside of fairy tales, but I felt like that meant that like it was just too similar to Tilly's story, like because that meant Oscar would be a quarter fictional, and like the whole point is that Tilly's fictional half fictional nature is really unusual, and like that's why the stories are about her. So I just thought it was too similar, and I got a bit tangled up in the magic of it. But yes. I liked the idea that Oscar is like has the book wandering roots as well.
Lovely, thank you. Apologies for the spoiler, everybody. There are many other surprises. So Alana has. Oh no, this is from Lizzie. Sorry. Why did you choose Little Princess to connect the book to?
This was a mix of, again, we've sort of already sort of spoiled a bit about who Tilly is, but when I was thinking about that, which book to use for that, there was it was a combination of kind of books that I loved and books that kind of worked for the kind of what I needed, and the character that I use particularly in that book works because they're not very present in the book, so you can imagine things that might have happened without kind of messing with the actual book. I have a really I try to be very I guess respectful of the original books in terms of I try not to it's important for me to try and capture the voices and the tones of those characters and not change them fundamentally. It's different with fairy tales because there's so many different versions of fairy tales and they don't belong to one specific author. But when an author has created a character, I try not to have them doing things that I feel would, out of character. And so I felt with A Little Princess, it kind of worked without messing with kind of people's relationships with the books too much. But it's also just a book that I really loved as a child. It just so kind of combination of the emotional relationship and the fact that it practically fit together.
Fantastic. Nora and Hannah have asked, have you read all the books that you mentioned in Pages and Co?
I have, yes. I mean, I've obviously read all the ones that are used explicitly. I'm trying to think of the ones that are kind of mentioned in passing, but I think I've read all of them. I've read, what would it be? Alice in Wonderland, I've read Anna I've read Little Princess. All the ones that are used
Treasure
properly,
Island.
I've read properly. Yeah. Treasure Island, I've read. There's very small references to Harry Potter and Pride and Prejudice and Paddington. I think so.
I love those actually. I love those.
So.
References in there. Fantastic. Mia has asked, what are your top 5 favorite books?
This is such a difficult question. Okay, so I'm glad you said 5 though, not 1. Okay. Charmed Life by Diana Wynne Jones. Diana Wynne Jones keeps cropping up on Bookwanderers Club, which makes me very happy. And I think of all of her books, that's my favorite. Momo by Michael Ende, which is a brilliant book that's not really super popular here, that absolutely should be. It was a bestseller in Germany. It's the author of The Never-Ending Story, but I love Momo even more than it's better than The Never-Ending Story. Anne of Green Gables, of course. Northern Lights, the Northern Lights trilogy by Philip Pullman had a huge, a very profound effect on me growing up. And then what else? I'm trying to just pick. I'm doing top 5 children's books to make it easier for me. And if I had to pick one more children's book, probably be Rooftopers by Catherine Randall.
Fantastic.
So that and When You Reach Me, I say, are my 2 kind of favorite middle grade children's books from recent years.
Wonderful. Let me have a look here. Gavin has asked, are there any books you'd love for your characters to wander into, but you'll not be allowed to? And also says, also your books are amazing.
Thank you,
and there's lots of people saying really lovely things. So thank you. And Anna can obviously see all of that.
So yeah, loads. Obviously everything in copyright. We don't even ask permission for copyright. I just use things that are out of copyright because no one would say yes. I wouldn't say yes if someone wanted to use my books. I think that also once things are out of copyright, obviously the author has passed away, so they can't see it and be upset by it. But it's past it. If a book is still interesting 70 years after the author has died, it usually means it kind of occupies a different space in the imagination. And even though I like the idea of book wandering into more recent books, I actually think it would get very complicated in terms of they're books that are much more new and they're kind of a bit more nebulous or unsettled in the way that they exist in the kind of public imagination. I think the ones that are really kind of tempting are not so much recent books, but the ones that feel like classics and are older, but they're not technically out of copyright. So things like Enid Blyton, Roald Dahl, The Phantom Tollbooth, it's those books that are in copyright, but feel like classics. Like Winnie the Pooh, things like that feel like classics, but are still just in copyright. Those are the ones that I would like to be able to use. But if Pages and Co, maybe what, some of those will go out of copyright in the next 10 years. So who knows? Yeah.
Is this
what?
Willow. Willow. Sorry, yes, this is Willow. Willow has asked, why did you make Oscar dyslexic? That's a very good question.
First, mainly it's just because I really think there's no one right or wrong way to be a reader, and being dyslexic doesn't need to be a barrier to being like to loving books. When I was a school librarian, I worked with lots of children who were dyslexic and still loved to read, and obviously there can be like practical barriers, but there's, you know, a lot of ways of kind of approaching that. And I just think that there's no one right or wrong way to be a reader. And I should do a shout out as well to Barrington Stoke, who are a brilliant publisher, who published dyslexia friendly books.
Yeah, I've seen some of their books. They're brilliant, actually. They do it really well. Oh, this is another good question from Willow. How did the British Library respond to the book?
Oh, thankfully they love it. Like, I was a bit nervous about making them such a big part of the book, but it's actually been really lovely, and I've ended up having like a really nice relationship with them. So they really got behind the book. They put the first book in a recent exhibition that they had, and they always have loads of the books in their bookshop. But they really enjoyed the connection. I've actually ended up working with them on, I did like a Christmas anthology for them, and hopefully going to be working on some other stuff with them as well. So that's been actually like a really, really nice thing that's come out of the book, because I've written in the British Library for years and worked in the British Library for years, and so it's really nice to get to work with them on stuff.
I love it. Do you find it exciting when you go back there? This is a sort of side question from that. When you go back in and imagining that the underlibrary.
Yeah, I always get like a little thrill when I walk past the gate to the King's Library, which is where the underlibrary entrance is. Okay.
Do you see yourself in Tilly?
Yes. Yes, I used to see myself less, and then I sort of made peace with the fact that she's not the same as me. Like, it's not as direct as Tilly is me, and she has qualities that I don't have. Or didn't have when I was a child. But like, I think when you write, all your characters have something of you in them. Like, it's just, you know, because that's how you make them realistic, is by thinking about, that's your best like resource for how people react to things. But Tilly certainly has, like, you know, her love of books, her relationship with her granddad, but there's so much like her family situation is, even though her granddad's inspired by my granddad, like, I grew up with wonderful, loving parents. You know, my parents are very present, and like, you know, so it's there's elements of her,
a link, but it's not.
But it's
fab. Alana has said, "Wait, there's a book 4."
Yeah. And I saw someone ask about like a sneak peek, which I think they're talking about book 4 maybe. So I can't. Or maybe a book 3 that's talking about, actually. Book 4, yes. So there is going to be a book 4, 5, and 6. But they're going to operate as like they're trilogies that are linked, basically. So book 4 is not going to be like it's not necessarily like a direct sequel to book 3, but it's very much like it's like a new trilogy in the book wandering world. But you will see characters and places that you know,
are familiar with them.
But it kind of goes off in a slightly like, it's like a linked trilogy. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. We're going to do a last few just because we're out of time. This is a good one from Sharon. Hi, Anna. I love your books. Would you include any Shakespearean characters in one of your Pages and Co books? And that's from Anna, age 9. Hi,
Anna. That's naughty of you to ask it, because you know it puts me in a slightly awkward position. Let's just
Would you consider including a Shakespearean?
Yes, character? I would. And I think book 3. Book 3 has some Shakespearean bits of book wandering in. So yes.
Okay. Which book in Pages and Co is your personal favourite?
I would say at the moment it's book 3. I think firstly, like, I always tend to like the one I'm working on more because it sort of has that potential. You still feel like you can make it better. And also I like to think, I hope that I get better as a writer the more books I come out. I would hope that each book is better than the last, but I've certainly I think I've enjoyed writing book 3 the most. It gets quite like abstract and weird, which I have enjoyed writing, and it has a new character in it that I have really loved writing.
And I think everyone will like reading. 2 more questions. When will book 3 be out?
Oh, and just to say, please don't worry about the spoiler. That's not your fault at all. No, please don't worry. It's always weird when it's like
it's always tricky.
Book 2, because like you never know who's read what, and like sometimes I never really know what to say and what not to say. I was just gonna encourage you to not say it out loud, but please don't worry at all. It's only a minor spoiler.
So yes, when will book 3 be out?
September,
which somebody has replied, but I just thought we'd
15th in the US and I think 17th here. September.
I love it. And Gavin has asked, will you do some more booktubing? Well, I mean, I mean, obviously, I'm doing this at the moment, which is a bit different from what I have been doing. Like, I always am planning on doing more. I've got a bookshelf tour filmed that I need to edit and do a voiceover for, which I am. So that's like, and I have like things like I filmed the whole time I did my US tour last year for the first book coming out in the US. I filmed like loads of stuff for that, and I just haven't edited it together. So I have the best of intentions, but it just takes time. And we're super late with book 3 is like behind schedule. So yes, although I'm not sure when. I have good intentions. Fantastic. So that is all we've got time for today, but I'm going to end as you always end, with a bookshop recommendation. What would be your bookshop recommendation?
So I have to
shout out, sorry.
Obviously there's loads of brilliant bookshops. I have to recommend our local independent children's bookshop, which is Muswell Hill Children's Bookshop, which is near where we live, and it's an absolutely fabulous independent children's bookshop. They are still doing online and phone orders, and we'll link to them in the description. So that's our local, and it's a brilliant children's bookshop.
Fantastic.
Also, I just wanted to say, if you've asked a question that I haven't answered, do send it to me on Twitter if you want it asked. I'm a case for books on Twitter as well, and if you want me, I can fill in any gaps if you want.
Lovely. And finally, we're going to end with your writing prompt. So here's Anna's writing prompt to hopefully inspire you to continue reading and writing. So yes, your writing prompt.
So this is a variation on the one I sort of often do, in terms of, because obviously with book wandering, like the easy and fun prompt to do is to imagine yourself into a book. But because the second book has just come out and it's fairy tales, I'm going to make it a bit more specific, and I want you to pick a fairy tale that you like or a fairy tale that you don't like, and write yourself book wandering inside of that fairy tale. Maybe imagine what the characters would be like, whether they're what you're expecting. Like, you know, in I didn't read this bit out, but they bump into Prince Charming and he's not very charming. So pick a fairy tale and book wander inside of that. And if you do some writing, I would love to read it. Do take a picture, or you can email me at my author email address, which we'll put in the description box as well.
Lovely. Thank you for having me on, and I hope that I've done a decent job. I know I'm not as good as interviewing as Anna, but I hope I've managed to ask a lot of your questions, and yes, hope I've done an okay job. So thank you for watching. I'll probably let you finish it.
Thank you.
Finish the show.
Thank you for, I think he's done a great job. Thank you everybody for watching and for all your questions. As I say, like, do if we've missed any, do ask them on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm a case for books on all social platforms, and I'm always happy to answer questions. Next week on the Bookwanderers Club, Monday, we have Justin Somper, who is the author of the Vampirates. I need to make sure I know how to say that. Vampirates, I think it would be.
Love it.
Yeah, Vampire Pirates, great.
Love it.
So that's on Monday. On Wednesday, we have Jenny Spangler, who is the author of The Vanishing Trick, which is the current Waterstones Children's Book of the Month. And on Friday, at very popular request, we have Michelle Harrison. So those are all going to be live at 2 p.m. on A Case of Books. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely bank holiday.
Yes, enjoy.
Weekend.
Stay safe.
Thank you for all of your lovely comments.
Nice to see you guys. Bye.